Hello, my name's Dr. P. Dominique Paterano, PhD, founder and head coach of Crimson Coaching. Today's talk is called Organize Your Backpack, Room, and School Stuff, and it's intended for middle, high school, and college students. I started my career as a high school teacher, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on. And I've been president of Crimson Coaching since 2014. Crimson Coaching provides academic tutoring, test prep, and college consulting to students worldwide. Sometimes people ask me, why is your company called Crimson Coaching? And as you can see from the mats of the photograph and diploma behind me, they are the color crimson, which is the color of my alma mater, Harvard. And because what I do is generally coach students and sometimes adults to achieve their academic potential, the company's called Crimson Coaching. And I developed today's talk in order to be able to help a huge amount of students who, in my long career as a high school teacher, I taught ninth graders the most frequently. And I noted that transition between eighth grade and high school was often very challenging for many students because it required students to really keep track of their own work. No longer do they have teachers on top of them telling them what to do, and organization is key to that. And I noticed that many times students floundered in my class, not because they weren't bright. It was more often because they failed to hand in homework assignments, couldn't keep track of due dates and things like that. So today's talk is really intended for all of you who have the same struggles. Before we go any further, I do just want to thank you for tuning in and listening to this talk. Thank you to Laura Panter, the young adult librarian, for inviting me to deliver it, and to Sachem Public Library for hosting today's talk. So as a trained historian, my PhD is in history. I like to be really transparent about what my sources are. So my first source is definitely personal. This is the place where I lived as a junior and senior at Harvard. It's called Dunster House, and it's got that typical dome with the crimson dome there. And as you might guess, I happen to be a pretty organized student myself. And so many of the tips and tricks are things that I myself did as a student and that I'll share with you. But of course, I realize that doesn't always work for many people, just student to student. So I'll also share some tips and tricks that I developed as a teacher. This is Great Neck North High School, where I began my career as a teacher. But since then, I have taught other places as well, like Scarsdale High School in Westchester County and Horace Mann School, an elite independent day school in New York City. So many of my tips come from my career as a high school teacher, as well as serving as sort of organization private coach for students, working one-on-one with them, and also teaching these skills in short workshop settings. And if you're interested in seeing such a or taking such a course for free, if you go to my website, crimsoncoaching.com, you'll see that website down at the bottom. You'll see a link to sign up for a course that starts on September 10th, and it runs 4 consecutive Saturdays from 1 to 2:30 in the afternoon. And you have to sign up for each course individually. And we will be going much more in depth for study skills and note taking, as well as taming anxiety and self-care, in addition to organizing. And then my last source is research. You know, I am a person who loves to continue learning, and one of my favorite podcasts is the Huberman Lab podcast. Andrew Huberman is a neurobiologist and ophthalmologist at Stanford School of Medicine, and some of the tips that I'll be sharing with you today come directly from his podcast, and are really informed by the latest science in how the brain works. So if you're a amateur science geek like me, I encourage you to check him out. So let's just talk about what being organized can do for you. I know that many of you who aren't adherently organized might think, my teacher's telling me to get organized, my mom's telling me to get organized. Why should I get organized? Who cares? This is what I think the sort of benefits of getting organized are. And you might want to just pick your own. And I really encourage you to think about this, and also maybe write down the benefits that appeal to you the most. I do think that being better organized will help you to get better grades, because if your teacher counts homework for part of the grade, if your teacher counts handing things in on time as part of the grade, and you didn't used to do those things before when you were disorganized, and you can do them now when you are organized, I do think that you will probably likely get slightly better grades. I also think that you might feel less stressed. I truly believe that most students who don't hand things in know that they're supposed to be handing them in, and are actually profoundly anxious when they're not doing their work. Often they suffer from perfectionism, which is they think, my end work product will not be perfect, so why even bother trying to start? And that's another sort of issue, one that you might want to talk to your guidance counselor about as well, because I do think it's important to get over that. But whatever getting organized will do for you, why don't you take a moment to jot that down now, and feel free to pause this recording if you feel like that's something you'll do. Studies show that people who do write down their goals are 50% more likely to achieve them, so I really encourage you to do that. You might want to also get really specific if you haven't done that already. Maybe your goal is get better grades because I hand in my homework because now I know where it is. Or maybe your goal is to make honor roll this year because I'm handing all my work in on time. Whatever that goal is, I do think you will benefit by writing that down. And once you've written it down, I encourage you to post this on your wall or in your mirror, the corner of your mirror. You could even take a picture of it and use it as the wallpaper in your phone, somewhere you could see it every day, because most of us are visual learners. And if we can see sort of like a motivation every day in and day out, it may help us to get over the inertia that we feel when we don't want to get organized, because it will require a little bit of work. So I'm a big believer in the fact that organization often begins with what you buy, and you don't have to spend a ton of money in order to do this. Most of us this time of year are going school shopping anyway. But if you have struggled with organization in the past, I do believe it's a good idea to color match your folders and notebooks. So I am a big adherent to the belief that accordion files do not work to get you organized unless you are already a highly organized student. I once worked with a boy who had one of those big accordion files, one thing where everything went in. It was supposed to be one slot for each subject, but of course, nothing wound up going in the right place. And, one day we had a 2-hour session in which we laid everything out on his dining room table and we put everything in piles. He was an accordion folder user. I don't think they work if you're not already organized. So instead, I recommend for each subject you have, get a matching folder and notebook. And these things are super cheap these days. You can get sometimes folders and one subject notebooks for a quarter or 50 cents. I do believe that one subject notebooks are better, and the spiral with perforated sheets are the best, because you're less likely than loose leaf paper to lose track of them. And when you're using your lockers, and I know that many of you don't use lockers, so hang on, we'll talk about that in a second. It's easy to say, okay, social studies is blue. I'm grabbing my blue folder and my blue notebook, and then the subject after that is math. I'm grabbing my pink notebook and my pink folder. Okay. If you want to be really environmentally conscious, you might want to invest a little more in your folder and get one of those hard plastic kind. I think they will probably last until the apocalypse. So you could certainly use them year after year after year. Ooh, sorry about that. The reason why I like a one subject spiral instead of, say, a 3-subject spiral for the whole year. First of all, if you're buying a different notebook for each subject, it's going to get heavy if you've got 7 different, 3-subject notebooks. But also to prevent, God forbid, people who tend to be disorganized often lose things. And so if you do lose something, you're only losing one subject worth, 70 pages worth of notes, rather than potentially a whole year's worth of notes. And the reason why I like a spiral versus a loose leaf, I once had a student, she had a massive loose leaf. It was like this thick with all her notes for every single subject in that loose leaf. And I said to her, what happens if it falls and then all your notes go, to the wind? And she just kind of shrugged sheepishly. I think, again, unless you're really organized and you're committed to purging that out every other week or so, and taking lots of notes out, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's going to get more and more difficult for you to get rid of all that stuff and carry it around. So I just think, get the one subject spiral for every subject. Now, I also get that sometimes you rip papers out of that. That's why you have a folder and or a mini stapler. If you really feel like I rip something out to give it to the teacher and I want to put it back in the order in which it appears in my notebook, you'll get a mini stapler. I think mini staplers are also really great just for handing stuff in. Some teachers, probably your older teachers, may actually be still collecting papers. I get that many teachers are collecting assignments digitally, but especially if you have a teacher who's collecting work on paper, it's a great idea to have one of those mini staplers. And then I also think it's a really great idea to have a desk blotter calendar, one of those massive ones that's, huge. It sits on your desk and you could see it by the month, September, then it's perforated at the top. You peel that off and throw it away, October, November, such and so forth. The reason why, and if you attend my time management workshop, you will understand what I use that desk blotter calendar for. Basically, I think it's really important when you start to organize your time, which is the most important resource that we have, that you be able to see at a glance what you have due for the entire month. It's really difficult if you're only using your daily planner, which I recommend for in-school, jotting down what your assignments are and then moving on. But for the daily planner, if you have a paper that's due in 3 weeks, you go and you label down, September 21st. Well, you don't see that until September 21st. And so there needs to be some sort of coordination between writing down your homework, I have a paper due September 21st on, September 6th, and then transferring that to your monthly planner once you get home. And those are the kinds of skills that we're going to be going over in that worksheet that I mentioned, workshop that I mentioned. So you also need to be organized at home, right? You can't just, buy stuff and expect that you'll stay organized. So I do recommend that you have a dedicated workspace, that you work in the same place all the time, not one day on the living room couch, another day at the dining room table, another day on my bed. Okay. It's great if you can work in your bedroom. If you have a sibling that you share a room with, or if you're at college and you have a roommate, it might also be a good idea to invest in some noise canceling headphones if you have to work in a place where there are other people around, because I get that not everybody has their own bedroom. A lot of students say, should I work? A lot of students want to work on their bed. Parents want them to work at a desk. I say, unless you're reading, say, a novel or something that your English teacher gave you right before bed, and you're using that as kind of your wind down time, you should be at a desk. Studies show that you're more alert when your head is higher than your heart. And if you are sitting at a desk, you've got light coming in at you like I have right now, you're just going to be prepping your physical body for work. Moreover, oftentimes you're not just reading, you have to write something, especially with, say, math or science. So, it is really impossible on your bed to do math problems. I'm sorry, that is just the case. So if you're not at your own desk in your bedroom, say, and you have to work at the kitchen table, again, I would say better the kitchen table than the living room couch. Okay. If it's within your family's budget, I would say really try to invest in your own desk, and make sure that you do try out your, chair. Make sure that that's the right angle for you. You know, Studies also show that when our eyes are slightly elevated rather than down, that's actually going to enhance the feeling of being awake. Okay, so I'll say that one more time. When your eyes are slightly elevated, as opposed to looking down, you're going to be more awake. And of course, being more awake will help us to remember things and to study better. So I actually did this not because I had a problem with falling asleep, but I have a lot of neck problems because I spend a lot of time at the computer. So believe it or not, my computer right now is on 2 ACT books, and one box that is about this thick, and a tiny, tiny little other box where I have my little ring light hooked on to, so that I don't think my eyes are really up. I think my eyes are looking straight out at my little green light where my camera is on my MacBook. Nevertheless, of course, if you have a laptop, this is going to require you to invest in a wireless keyboard and a wireless mouse. Okay. I will say I have no affiliation with these companies. I got the set of mine on Amazon, I think for $30. And within a week, my upper back pain went away because I'm now able to sit up straight rather than hunched over at my desk, down at my laptop. So there's the added benefit of staying awake. So I do think that that's really important to think about. You also, especially if you're a student struggling with ADHD or ADD, you also want to try to make sure that you have a clear visual field behind you, so that there's not lots of posters or post-its or signs or other things. I worked once, I was a college essay coach for a young lady 2 years ago who discovered in her teens that she had ADD. And she said she got rid of a bulletin board behind her computer where she had lots of different things, and then it was just plain. And she said she was able to concentrate so much more easily when she had that clear visual field behind her. And then finally, this is also something you could purchase at the, Staples, Amazon, whatever. Invest in a storage crate. We'll talk about how to use that in a couple of slides. In manila envelopes and in a Sharpie. Okay, so these are the things that you want to be keeping at home. Now let's talk about the backpack. I realize that the backpack is kind of the conduit between home and school. So let's talk about what should be going into your backpack. I realize this time of year, many students are getting brand new backpacks. So I recommend having one that has a central compartment. And the only things that should be going in the central compartment are your folders and notebooks, color-coded, the ones that you bought, any books that you might have to bring back and forth, and a personal care item pouch, okay? The pouch could contain things like gum or eye drops or tissues, things like that, okay? In your outer pocket, keep pens, pencils, and your phone, okay? If you have one and if you're allowed to bring it to school. Nothing would kind of, students don't like the sound of a teacher's nails on a blackboard. I never liked the sound of students rumbling in their backpack looking for a pen, okay? You're going to be using most likely a pen or a pencil in every single class, so have it handy, able to be grabbed at a moment's notice. And I recommend putting your name and phone number on your backpack, as well as every loose item. So every notebook, every book, your pouch itself, so that in case you lose it, it can find its way back to you. And now, how should you stay organized at home? Well, once you've purchased all those things and you got your room set up, you've got your backpack all set up, you want to think about preparing your backpack every night with your homework due the next day and any items that you need for school the next day. And yes, I say put the phone in there before you go to bed at night. There's really no reason why you should have your phone next to you. On my website, crimsoncoaching.com, on the resource page, I've got lots of links to old school alarm clocks that are under $10. The phone is in your bed at night is one of the worst distractions for you and really prevents, I believe, a lot of students from getting the 9 1/4 hours of sleep on average that teens need. Sorry about that. So on Friday afternoon, or whenever you get home from school on Friday, I recommend that you empty that backpack. And I would write that event, empty backpack, on your big monthly desk plotter calendar for, every Friday at 5 or whenever you get home. You want to throw out any garbage that's accumulated there during the week, any rogue papers that, are lying around at the bottom, and then refill your tissues, your gum, your whatever, any snacks, and any school supplies like that mini stapler or something like that. And then once a month, maybe you want to put this on the first day of the month, last day of the month, whatever. You want to put paper that are in your folder. Sometimes your folders are going to get nice and thick. If you've already taken a test on that item, it should go into the storage crate. Okay, I recommend using the Sharpie to write on a manila envelope, say science, September through October, and putting those things in there, right? Once your notebook is all filled with notes, you could also put that into the big manila envelope. And if these tricks or tips are sounding good to you, again, we're going to be going into these much more in detail in the workshop that I'm teaching in September, October. So you could be organized at home, but school is where you are for 6 or 7 hours a day. So it's a good idea to think about, well, how can I stay organized at school? The best way is to try to get there early. Students who would always come rushing breathless into my class in first period, that's a way to be really frazzled for the entire day. And so I really say get to school 5 minutes early. Put the items into your backpack that you'll need for your morning classes. Put the rest into your locker. Then take 5 minutes at lunch. Take those things out and then put your afternoon items in, and then stay 5 minutes after school ends and figure out, what do I need for home? What can stay here? I realize that this little plan of mine requires the use of lockers, and many students these days do not use lockers. I get that schools are crowded and you are busy and that passing time is tough. However, I really have to say I don't really buy that. I went to Connecticut High School during the 1980s when we were on split session because there were so many students in school and we all used our lockers. The school is very large, just like Sachem High Schools are. And we still used our lockers. Okay. It's really, I also happen to be a yoga teacher, and I think it's really bad for you to be carrying everything that you need all day long on your back. Okay. If you really think it's impossible, I do think you should reach out to teachers and guidance counselors and maybe they can help. But I do think going before school, once in the middle of the day, and after school to a locker, it's not like you're going every single class after every single class, okay? You should be able to find one time in the middle of the day when you can use your locker. So I get that this, all of my plans sound super simple, right? When I'm talking about them to you. However, even, there's little breadcrumbs that I left that this organization plan might not go as planned. Like, for instance, if you were filing everything perfectly, why would there be rogue papers in the bottom of your backpack on Fridays, right? I get the fact that school is often fast paced. Your teachers are sometimes shouting your homework to you on your way out the door. You can't always use your planner. Maybe they're giving you a permission slip on your way out the door and you just shove it in your backpack. I get that, none of this is going to be easy and it's never going to be perfect. And so I just say, that's okay. Just be kind to yourself. Remember that if you view getting organized as a process rather than as a one-time destination, that, okay, I'm going to get organized on September 6th and then you never have to do anything again. Of course, that is not realistic, right? Even myself, my desk sometimes, will look crazy. I'll be speaking to people. You would have no idea that my desk is all crazy, but I will take a moment like I did yesterday and I will clean everything down and, start anew. So if you view this as a habit that you need to schedule into your month, I think that is a lot easier to think about than a one-time destination. And of course, forgive yourself for lapses. Try not to get down on yourself if your life gets crazy. I also think it's perfectly acceptable and preferable to ask for help rather than trying to do this all on your own, especially when you're just getting started. Getting organized is tough, and maybe you have a friend or a sibling or a roommate who is organized and they are just chomping at the bit to share their secrets with you. Ask them to. So that concludes my talk for today. If we were meeting in person, I would give you a handout like a teacher always does, but because this is virtual, I do have a PDF for you. And if you email me at info@crimsoncoaching.com and ask for my tips for getting and staying organized, I'd be happy to send that to you. If you like Crimson Coaching on Facebook, you may find out information about my upcoming talks. I will be honest though, I am sometimes not super diligent about posting them on Facebook because this happens, fall is my very busy time of year. So a better way to learn about my upcoming free talks is to go to my website, crimsoncoaching.com, and go to the classes and workshops tab, and or sign up for my newsletter. At the homepage, there'll be a banner across the top that says sign up for our Desk to Nest newsletter. You could do that. It's free. I promise I don't spam you. The newsletter comes just once a month. And in addition to a helpful article, usually intended for parents, way down at the bottom, I have a list of helpful articles that others have written, as well as all my upcoming free talks for that month. And then finally, if you subscribe to Crimson Coaching on YouTube, where you'll find recordings of past talks like these, you'll be notified of when I do post new videos in the future. So if this were a live webinar, I would generally take questions now, but just because we're not live, that doesn't mean that I won't take your questions. If you do have questions, again, feel free to go to info@crimsoncoaching.com. You can also check out the blog at crimsoncoaching.com. There I've written months and months worth of blog posts, and you may find the answer to your question there as well. So with that said, I do just want to thank you once again, if you've made it to this point in the video, for sticking with it. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Laura Panter, the young adult librarian at Sachem, for inviting me, and for Sachem Public Library for sponsoring this talk. I hope you tune in for my next talk next month. And in the meantime, happy back to school. I hope you all have a great year.